Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to today's ODI Fridays lunchtime lecture. I'm Hannah, I'm the Head of Marketing Membership here at the ODI. Every year thousands of lives are lost through workplace accidents and ill health. The Health and Safety Executive is leading the way in improving global health and safety performance through the new Discovering Safety programme. Here to tell us more is Stephen from the HSE. I'd just like to do a few housekeeping things before we move on. The first one is, if you've got any questions, please wait till the end and I'll pass you this mic. It won't amplify your voice, so just please speak into it so people watching online can hear. And secondly, if you are watching on the live stream, please use hashtag ODI Fridays to ask your questions and I'll read them out at the end. Over to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Anna. Thank you very much for the introduction. And good afternoon to everyone in the room and the same to those joining online. As Hannah said, my name's Steve Naylor and I'm a data scientist working out of HSE's Science Division. HSE is the regulator of health and safety across Great Britain. And I'm here today to provide an overview of the work that we do as an organisation, and in particular how we use data science and data analytics to support HSE's regulatory function and its mission to prevent death, injury and ill health in Great Britain's workplaces. My plan for the presentation is as follows. I'll first of all introduce the broad challenge that we face as health and safety practitioners, whether we are regulators or the regulated. I'll then provide an overview of what we feel is an appropriate and suitable data-driven strategy for actually dealing with these challenges in today's world of advanced analytics and big data. I'll then provide an introduction to HSE's Discovering Safety programme that's looking to do actually that very thing, to bring to bear cutting-edge data science and data analytics to solve global health and safety problems. I'll talk about some of the broad aspirations for the programme, what we're looking to achieve, the impacts that we're hoping to actually deliver. Talk about some of the specific projects that we're looking to deliver as part of the programme and some of the tools and techniques we're looking to develop and apply. And then I'll close with some concluding remarks. Okay, so first off, the global health and safety challenge that countries and organisations face currently. And this is a generic challenge that's shared across many parts of the developed world and across many organisations today. And it's that the challenge of delivering continuous improvements in health and safety performance is becoming harder and harder. And it's in part because of the significant improvements and progress that we've made over the last 30 years with regards health and safety. And this is reflected in the time series that we've got on this slide here, which illustrates generally the fact that fatality rates have reduced significantly over the last 30 years in the typical workplaces in the developed world. The central challenge for us as health and safety practitioners, like in any sort of enterprise, is to deliver continuous improvements in what we're looking to achieve. And I think there are two adages that are particularly relevant to health and safety today. The first is that the more you improve at something, the harder it is to actually deliver further improvements and continuous improvements. And that's certainly the case with health and safety. And I think the other adage that's really relevant is that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. It's a common adage that's used across many disciplines, and it's very much the case within health and safety and within data analytics as well. And that's really what we're looking to change and address as a research programme and as a regulator as well. We are looking to actually bring to bear cutting-edge analytics to effectively break through those performance plateaus so we can reduce accidents and injuries across workplaces further. And how are we looking to do that? Well, I mean, our philosophy is very much founded on the belief that we need to push safety analytics as a scientific discipline up the classic knowledge pyramid. The conversations that we have with industry highlights very much that, obviously with exceptions, a lot of the safety analytics that are actually carried out by organisations and across the health and safety community is very much focused in the middle of the knowledge pyramid diagram that we've got here. So it's very much focused on the use of descriptive techniques to document effectively what's happening at a particular point in time or what has happened. So from a health and safety point of view, where failures have happened, who they've happened to, and where they've actually happened. And obviously data analytics can actually elucidate far more useful insights than just those things, and that's very much what we're looking to do. And we feel that if we're able to actually provide intelligence to allow some of those higher value questions to be addressed, then we'll go some way in actually delivering continuous improvements in performance. And I suppose the next step up from the use of data to profile how things are doing is to use it to actually discover new knowledge and new insights. And obviously within health and safety, with the dynamically changing workplace across the world, there's always new and emerging risks that are arising in workplaces. And data science and data analytics can play an important role in actually identifying some of those. If we take another step up again, up the pyramid, the ability to actually be more proactive in how we actually undertake health and safety will be a huge step forward. So rather than it being a reactive exercise, the potential to be able to actually predict what's around the corner and then do something about it before it actually happens is potentially hugely powerful. And then I suppose the step up further then is the use of prescriptive tools and techniques that are actually being used to actually inform a specific course of action. So that's the journey that we feel that we're on at the moment, and the Discovering Safety programme, which we'll talk about a little bit more in this presentation, is very much looking to do that. In terms of what this looks at an organisational level, effectively at the coal face within workplaces, what we tried to do in this slide here is to give you an idea of the sorts of tools and techniques that are typically used by organisations, and potentially, if we're looking to push analytics along the continuum, what new tools and techniques that we can actually bring to bear. So the foundations for any data analytics strategy is to get the data foundations obviously right. And there's been big leaps forward and progress made within industry over the last 5 or 10 years, with the introduction of enterprise content management systems that are effectively looking to bring together data that was previously spread across an organisation on lots of different networks and computers and getting it linked into one virtual place. And that obviously opens up opportunities to do far more with the data when we've actually got it in that format and stored in that way. It obviously introduces new challenges as well, and we hear a lot about the challenges of big data and being able to actually extract useful insights when data is actually stored in that way. But it's potentially a big leap forward. And then I think if we're actually going to progress along the continuum, with the advent of new tools and techniques centred around text mining and natural language processing, and the emergence of cognitive analytics as a discipline, it's really changing the face of how data analytics can be used in many disciplines and not just health and safety. So what I've tried to illustrate here is this gradual transition away from data being the unit of analysis when we're actually carrying out data analytics and data science projects, and a move towards units of knowledge being the analytic currency. And I'll illustrate how some of the projects that we're actually carrying out with our own work is looking to actually do that. Okay, so on to just a little bit of background to the Discovering Safety programme. So this is a 5-year research programme that's funded by a grant from the Lloyd's Register Foundation. And it's bringing together expertise across HSE's science division and its operation and regulatory functions, and academics across the University of Manchester. So we're looking to actually tap the expertise across a number of academic schools across Manchester, including the Data Science and AI Institute and their engineering schools as well. And the research is being delivered through the newly established Thomas Ashton Institute, which is effectively the umbrella organisation that brings together all those capabilities under the one place, if you like. In terms of the foundations for the programme, as you can imagine, HSE as a regulator generates huge amounts of data as part of its day-to-day regulatory function. So incidents that get reported to HSE by workplaces and organisations, and concerns that get reported by members of the public and the workers themselves. And typically HSE is fielding about 70 to 80,000 reports of accidents that occur in workplaces that are above the threshold for requiring reporting. So a huge amount of information coming into the organisation, and a huge amount of information that's then generated off the back of the regulatory activities that HSE actually carries out. So approximately 20 to 25,000 inspections are carried out by HSE's inspectors in response to some of the incidents that get reported, and then also as part of HSE's ongoing programme of proactive inspection efforts. And that obviously generates a huge amount of information on the extent to which risks are actually controlled in workplaces. And very often this is in response to particular accidents that are being reported. And a lot of the intelligence that's generated through the inspection work is really trying to get at the heart of the reasons why those failures have actually happened. So really robust, useful, insightful learning that's generated just off the back of day-to-day operations. HSE has its science division that provides more detailed support to HSE's regulatory function, if particularly in situations where the accidents involve complex failures of equipment or just very complex scenarios generally that have gone wrong. And we can bring to bear some of the expertise across our science division to actually do that as well. And that activity, that work generates additional information that's useful for us as data scientists. And what we're looking to do on the Discovery and Safety programme is effectively make better use of that data set than we've done before. It's fair to say that certainly 5 to 10 years ago, like lots of organisations, that data landscape was very complex across HSE. So like many organisations, data was held disparately in lots of different places. And there's been huge progress and advances made over recent years to actually get those data sets and those resources into a format, into a place, into a structure that allows us to make better collective use of it. And the Discovery and Safety programme is looking to continue that work that we started. We recognise that the data that we hold as the regulator is only the tip of the safety data iceberg. It's only that data that actually relates to accidents that are above that threshold for requiring regulatory intervention. But industry themselves hold a huge amount of additional useful data relating to how work is actually carried out and the safety dimension to those work activities. And we're really keen as a research programme to tap the value and the learning in that data as well. And that data typically mirrors a lot of the data that HSE collects as an organisation. So very much centred around incident reports and inspection reports and investigation reports. And then also more proactive activities that are carried out across organisations as part of efforts to continuously monitor how risks are being controlled and how accidents are being prevented. So things like walkabouts, formal audits, occupational hygiene work and the like. And that all contributes to this knowledge base that we're hoping to actually make use of. What we recognise as a regulator also is that the data landscape is changing significantly for us and for the organisations that we regulate. And that's in part in response to this, the emergence of technologies that we often term Industry 4 technologies. They're a reflection of the fact that the technologies that are used in workplaces to actually direct and inform day-to-day operations are becoming hugely more complicated and connected with the advent of the industry, Internet of Things and the like. And that's generating additional data sets that we can actually make use of as R&D practitioners. So technologies such as wearable devices, aerial drones that can potentially be used to monitor structural integrity of assets. Obviously video and CCTV, which is primarily used for security and access control purposes, but it opens up opportunities to actually support the surveillance of workplaces. If we can develop the analytic tools and techniques that can actually tap some of those data sources. We also have then mobile apps and smart devices that are increasingly used by workers when they're actually carrying out tasks as well. And all these things are generating additional volumes of data that we can actually make use of. But what we recognise is that the challenge associated with actually tapping them are quite different to the challenges that we've faced before. So in this era where the desire to actually analyse data real time, generate insights real time and then action real time obviously opens up huge challenges for us as data scientists in being able to actually do that. But again, these are some of the things that we're grappling with as part of our research work. So in terms of how we actually make all this our reality, we really are big advocates of this idea of creating data trusts. And obviously the Discovery and Safety programme is a big start along that journey. So we're effectively creating a data resource that our research partners can actually make use of, in addition to us, to actually support some of the aims and objectives of the programme. But what we envisage further down the line is the creation of some sort of effectively outward-facing resource that industry and the global stakeholder community can actually interact with and contribute to. So it's not just a case of us using our data, generating learning and sharing the learning. What we envisage potentially is the creation of infrastructure and a framework effectively supporting R&D across the global stakeholder community. So our desire is for industry to feed data in to our initiative. And we recognise that for them to have the appetite to do that, there are certain things that we need to have in place. There needs to be obviously a tangible benefit to them in actually doing that. And we feel that some of the tools and techniques that we're developing as part of the programme, because the data that we're working with mirrors the data that they typically work with, we feel that making some of those tools and techniques available will be a good way of actually making that happen. And we're also keen to actually use stakeholders on the project to identify new challenges that we potentially can look to address collectively. So that's really I suppose, the grand ambitions of the programme further down the line. And in terms of how we exploit this asset, we recognise as a regulator that there are different ways in which we can actually get learning out of our organisation. Typically, the typical model for doing this has been very much focused on HSE's website. So any good practice material and guidance material that HSE has, a key way in which we actually get that out is through the website, as well as through some of the campaigns and obviously some of the other work that we carry out as an organisation. But we kind of feel that this model of moving the focus to the data and bringing to bear some of these tools and techniques opens up an opportunity to get some of this learning out in different ways. So rather than being reliant on the website being a repository of guidance material and information, what we potentially can do is actually change the whole paradigm of how information is actually got out. So rather than it being very much a case of searching for the information that our stakeholders need. We can change that to potentially posing the question, well, what is it do you need to know? And if we can actually develop some of the tools and techniques that allow some of these things to actually happen, then that we feel will be a big step forward. So in terms of the plans for the research programme, we started work in earnest about just less than a year ago. And the first phase of the programme has been very much focused around 7 major projects that we're actually carrying out. And we're also looking, as part of phase 1, to undertake a number of smaller feasibility studies that are basically looking to see is there potentially value in actually investing more R&D time in some of the more cutting-edge novel approaches that are out there and are perhaps being used in other disciplines. So just to go through very quickly some of the projects that we've actually got on at the moment. A big portion of the data that we have within our data repository is obviously data held in free text formats. It's effectively incident reports, inspection reports and investigation reports. So if we're going to be able to actually make good, effective, efficient collective use of those reports, then the ability to actually text mine and use natural language processing techniques to actually do that is obviously going to be key. So one of the foundational projects that we've actually got on at the moment that's been delivered in partnership with the University of Manchester's National Centre for Text Mining is to actually look to develop some of those tools and techniques that will allow us to do that. One of the other foundational projects that we've got on is effectively to look to see what are the best methods of actually getting some of the learning and some of the outputs of the research out to those who can make best use of it. And that's actually a big challenge, particularly given the global nature of the research programme and the fact that what works in one country potentially might not work in another. We feel that we need to give some thought to how we're actually getting some of these insights out. So we're spending a lot of time actually thinking about those things. We then have a number of industry-endorsed use case projects that are effectively focusing specifically on a health and safety challenge, a particular domain area. And they're represented on the slide at the bottom there. So 5 projects that we're carrying out in phase 1. One that's looking at making a better use of HSE's insights and operational intelligence around loss of containment events. A big issue within the safety domain is basically looking at mitigating some of those events that are effectively a precursor to more serious things around the corner. So given the amount of data that we've got on some of these events, we're looking to actually focus on that. We have another project that's looking really to support organisations' desires to be more outward facing in how they consider their own health and safety performance. So rather than it being an inward facing exercise, that's very much a case of actually just trending performance over time and in different areas of operations. We know that organisations are really interested in learning from peers and learning from others. So we're keen to create the tools and techniques to be able to do that. And we have a project that's specifically looking at industrial product safety. Obviously, it's a really important area of health and safety with the use of a diverse range of equipment, plant, machinery in workplaces. And again, with the day-to-day inspections that are carried out across HSE, then we have a lot of useful information in that area as well. We have another project that's specifically looking at supporting planners and designers of major construction projects and actually better considering some of the safety risks at the design stages of projects. So it's very much a case of looking to see what intelligence have we got within HSE's data sets that can support some of those decisions on construction projects. And then last but not least, we have a project that's very much focused on looking generally at what makes good leading indicators of performance from a safety perspective. Leading indicators of performance is a really important area of health and safety, because if we're going to be more proactive and preventative in how we actually mitigate risks, then we need to be collecting the right sort of intelligence to be able to do that. And if we have desires to use predictive analytic tools and techniques to be able to do that, then we need to know that we're collecting the right data to support some of those initiatives. So a piece of work that's ongoing at the moment that's effectively looking to define what are good leading indicators in different sector contexts. So that's a whistle-stop tour of some of the major projects. I mean, as I said, we're also looking to test proof of concept in a range of other areas. One specifically looking at predictive analytics as a tool that can be used for health and safety purposes. Another piece of work that is in recognition of the fact that there's so much useful data now that we can glean from websites and the internet. Lots of incident reporting databases and the like that are actually hosted on websites, and they obviously hold a wealth of useful information as well, and we want to make best collective use of all that information. So we're looking to develop the tools and techniques that are needed to actually scrape and harvest that information. We then have another project that's specifically looking at some of those new novel emerging technologies that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, and some of the challenges specifically with using them in safety contexts. And then the final proof of concept study is really looking and trying to tap the value of using visualization and modeling in safety as a way of communicating some of the risks that are actually apparent with work that's actually carried out or planned to be carried out. So that gives you an idea of some of the projects that we're actually delivering at the moment. If we're going to be successful in encouraging organisations to feed their data into the programme, and actually if we're going to be able as a research programme ourselves to actually share some of our data with research partners, then we obviously need to address the issue of sensitivity of certain data that we hold. Data can be sensitive for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it may hold obviously personal identifiable data. And with the introduction of the new GDPR regulations a couple of years back, then obviously we need to be mindful if we're looking to actually bring data in and get data out as a programme, we need to be compliant with those regulations. There's also potentially, legally and commercially sensitive data that we might hold as a regulator, and equally that industry hold as well. And if they're going to be in a position to feed that data in, then there may well be a need to actually redact and desensitize that data. Some of the data sets that we hold on workplaces are sensitive on national security grounds, particularly workplaces that are perhaps major infrastructure and the like, and major hazard sites as well. So there may well be a need to desensitize in relation to that. And then just more generally, I think if we're actually going to be able to create a resource that is manageable and that can actually be used in an effective manner, then another key challenge is actually distilling that data down so it actually can be used for the purposes that we're actually looking to put it. And that can actually potentially reduce some of the risks associated with the data coming in. If we're just very much focusing on the data that has value, then obviously that's one way of mitigating risks. So that's some of the issues that we have. We are currently in the process of piloting some tools and techniques that have actually been developed already by tech firms that are actually working in this space that recognise some of the challenges associated with being open with data. So rather than actually create tools and solutions from scratch, we're actually looking to make use of some of those solutions and see if we can actually apply them on our own data sets. So a proof of concept study that we're carrying out with a tech firm called Ohalo that's actually looking at that at the moment. As I've mentioned already, a big portion of the data that we have within our data archives is held in free text formats. So a big element of the work that we're actually carrying out is looking to develop some of the tools and techniques that are needed to actually make effective use of that data. And again, we're not looking to actually create solutions from scratch. Natural language processing and text mining have been used for many years in other disciplines, but most notably in the medical domains and in the clinical and biotech domains. So what we're looking to do effectively is to take some of those solutions and look to adapt them and scale them for use on health and safety data sets. And there are generally 4 capabilities that we're looking to develop as part of our work. The first capability is to be able to effectively sort and cluster and classify reports and documents based on topic content. So effectively do that initial coarse sorting of the information that we have using topic modelling techniques. We then have a work stream that's specifically looking to extract and identify specific content within specific reports and look to identify content and relations between entities that have health and safety relevance. So another key capability that we're looking to develop. Third capability is once we've identified the various content and relations, what we need to do is to be able to package it and structure it so we can actually interrogate it effectively. So that work is looking to bring to bear the use of knowledge graphs and graph databases and effectively look to create a knowledge base that allows us to answer some of the research questions that we're looking to answer. So another key fundamental capability that we're looking to address. And then the final capability is obviously some of the material that we have and we're working with is detailed reports, detailed audits, detailed inspections. So what we want to be able to do is effectively distill that down into the key content that has the most value. So a lot of work ongoing at the moment that's actually looking to do that. So just mentioned already about the interest in scraping health and safety information off websites. We have a project at the moment that's been carried out with a research partner called Polecat that's actually looking to adapt some of the tools and techniques that they've developed for use in different areas of application, mainly looking at reputation risk and corporate risk, and looking to see can we actually use some of those tools to identify risks pertaining to health and safety types of topics. So what we're looking to do with that project is basically create tools and techniques that can scrape information on major health and safety accidents that have happened around the world that are perhaps detailed and described in news feeds, news bulletins, news websites, and the like. And it obviously is a great resource, particularly when we're talking about those parts of the world where perhaps the incident reporting and investigation databases that they have are perhaps not as comprehensive as in some other parts of the world. Some of the other key intelligence that we're looking to actually scrape is information pertaining to new and emerging risks that are relevant in different sectors, different parts of the world, new regulations, new standards that are actually being considered or being introduced in different parts of the world, and also examples and case studies of new technologies that are being trialled and are being piloted. So this obviously will just add additional resolution and value to the data that we hold currently. Okay, on to just a number of case studies that illustrate the use of different analytic techniques across the programme. So I mentioned already that there's a lot of interest across industry in being able to be more outward facing in how they consider their health and safety performance. We recognise that we actually have a huge amount of information that comes into us on accidents that happen in different workplaces. And if we're able to actually package and curate and generate accident rates for different types of occupations, that's potentially a great resource for organisations to use to kind of compare how they're doing in relation to some of those work activities. So we have a piece of work that's looking to create tools that effectively allow organisations to enter information in on their workforces, the work that they're actually carrying out, and generate weighted averages based on that information, based on the information that HSE has. We're also really interested in this idea of creating the infrastructure and frameworks, allowing organisations to feed their data in at a particular point of time as part of a formal benchmarking exercise. And obviously the need to actually consider how that data is managed and how we treat that data and how we effectively communicate the outputs of the exercises are key challenges that we're looking to address as part of our work. So it gives you an idea of some of the ways that we're looking to use descriptive analytics on our work. I mentioned already about the value, particularly within the health and safety space, of being able to identify new and emerging risks that are actually coming up in different workplaces. And we have a piece of work that's looking to do that. And the starting point for us really is to use some of the text mining tools that we're developing to identify some of the key elements and factors that are on this classic bow tie diagram, which is a way really of thinking about health and safety and some of the key factors that determine the risks in workplaces and the potential likelihood of different accidents taking place. So the text mining work is looking to identify these across our archive of health and safety data. And once we've actually got that data actually in a format that allows us to interrogate it, the potential to actually look for associations and identify precursors of things actually going wrong is obviously magnified substantially. Another piece of work that we're looking to undertake as part of the programme is to see and test the extent to which we can actually use predictive analytics to predict health and safety endpoints based on information that organisations are actually collecting routinely. Obviously, I mentioned before, a key starting point for that is having the confidence that you're actually collecting the right data that is going to provide you the signal to be able to actually predict the things that you're wanting to actually prevent. So the work that we're undertaking on leading indicators provides the foundations really for looking to see can we actually predict some of the endpoints that we're wanting to prevent. And that doesn't necessarily have to be accidents and injuries. It could potentially be the prediction of non-compliances observed on inspections and audits. It's very much a case of actually building a data set that allows you to actually explore the associations that you're wanting to investigate. And then the final case study, just to illustrate, I suppose, how some of the outputs of the various analytic exercises that we can carry out can actually be used directly to inform specific actions and specific practices that have safety relevance. A lot of work that's going on at the moment, looking to see can we actually prevent when different safety critical equipment is likely to fail. And I think it's a nice analogy to, I suppose, the way the inspection regimes on people's cars are taking place now. So we're moving away from that model where it's very much a case of your car being inspected on a year-by-year basis, and perhaps even prior to that when it actually broke down, which is represented at the very bottom of this pyramid. So we're gradually moving to a situation where inspections and maintenance are actually carried out when they're specifically needed, not necessarily at particular points in time. And potentially with the fine detailed data that we're actually able to collect across different workplaces, it potentially gives us the opportunity to predict with a really fine resolution when an actual failure is likely to take place. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the equipment is actually starting to fail, which is obviously a big plus and a big benefit from a safety point of view. So that gives you just an idea of some of the case studies, some of the projects that we have on, and some of the ways in which we're actually using data analytics from a safety point of view. Just to go back to the initial question that we posed at the very outset, how we can use data to improve safety at work. I think there's really 6 ways in which we're looking to do this as an organisation and a research programme. I think first off, the ability to actually predict accidents that might be around the corner rather than actually reacting to accidents that have actually happened. That's a big step forward. That obviously allows us to be far more proactive in how we undertake health and safety, rather than it being very much a reactive exercise that's driven by when particular failures actually happen. It's allowing us to be far more evidence-based in how we actually investigate accidents, and we understand what the underlying causes of failures are. So rather than relying very much on gut feel, intuition, human judgment and tacit knowledge, the use of data analytics allows us to bring evidence-based decision making into that mix. Not particularly saying that human judgment and expertise is going to be obsolete. It's very much a case of actually having the entirety of evidence that we need together to make the best decisions. I think the other way, the other intelligence and insight that we're generating is basically being able to prevent accidents rather than actually mitigating them when they happen. So very much linked to that idea of prediction and being proactive. One of the other ways, obviously, is it's always preferable to actually address risks at the design and planning stages of any sort of work activity at any sort of project. And I think if we have the data on past operating experience to hand, it allows us to actually make those judgments and really let that actually happen. And I think the final big plus and big benefit of using data analytics in these ways is it allows us to be more targeted in the way we actually use our health and safety data resources that are typically limited and typically scarce across organisations. And I'd like to end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Do you have any questions? You've got one? If you wouldn't mind just speaking to the mic, it won't amplify your voice, but...
Hi there. Yeah, I was wondering, do you have any sort of early results yet, and how do you quantify success of the project?
Success on the project, very much based on, I suppose, the uptake and use of some of the tools that are actually creating. Mentioned that a number of the projects are endorsed by different parts of industry, and the idea is certainly for the end of phase 1 and the start of phase 2 is to actually identify test beds for using some of these tools and techniques. So the first phase is very much about creating the solutions, and we're hoping in phase 2, which is due to start in April of next year, that we'll be able to actually answer that very question. So work with industry to see how they can actually implement and deploy some of these tools in their workplaces, and that gives us the opportunity then to see what the potential benefits are.
So is that built in how you're going to quantify the results?
Yeah, I mean it's an important part, obviously, of the research programme to be able to demonstrate impact, and we want to be able to quantify that. So there will be some evaluations of some of the projects that are actually going to be planned, and we'll be able to basically see where the benefits are the greatest.
Does it mean, do you have an idea now?
Sorry, can you speak into the mic? Thank you.
So, do you have an idea of now what success looks like?
I think success for us is ultimately evidence of breaking through some of those performance plateaus. And also, in those parts of the world that are perhaps a little bit further behind on the journey, actually accelerating the decline in accident rates in those countries. I think if we were able to link some of the evaluation work that would be carried out across the specific projects to evidence that accident rates are actually coming down in those workplaces, it'll be kind of, a good evidence that we're actually moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Any more questions? I've got one. Clearly what you're doing here by sharing data is, as a regulator, transforming how you operate, but also transforming how the industry also responds to and reports accidents in the workplace. But because you're dealing with so many different types of organisations, presumably, how do you go about the culture change that comes with the sort of the more kind of data sharing, more I suppose IT side of things? How do you convince people that it's a good thing to do?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. I mean we recognise that it's not just simply a case of advocating some of these more advanced tools and techniques. That organisations are at different locations on that continuum. And it's very much a case of actually being able to make incremental steps. And I think that's what we're looking to do. We're not particularly saying that actually, there's a need to change totally what organisations are already doing. I mean, some of the change that needs to take place is not just with the tools and techniques and way we're analysing data. It is changing cultures and changing, for example, cultures of reporting accidents, because that is the starting point for having the data to be able to actually make evidence-based decisions. So some of the changes that need to be based are at that level. It's changes in perceptions and cultures as much as once we've got data, what we actually do with it.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, could you please join me in thanking Stephen for today's talk?